Good afternoon, good evening again, everyone, and welcome to our Women Power and the Polls webinar hosted by Girls of Impact Trinidad and Tobago. My name is Renee Atwell, and I am the founder and executive director of Girls of Impact, and we are a nonprofit organization that works with young women and girls across Trinidad and Tobago, promoting leadership training, mentorship, and personal and professional development. So, of course, we are having this very important webinar today on the heels of the Trinidad and Tobago general election, which is taking place on the 28th of April. And because one of our core pillars is, in fact, leadership, we thought it fit to bring together our members and young women and girls in Trinidad and Tobago to speak with women who are in politics and who was in politics about their journey, why your vote matters, why women in politics matter, and how we as women can actually lead change, not just on election day, but even beyond election. So, of course, as you guys would have seen from our flyers, our marketing material, we have an amazing lineup of speakers. And these are amazing women from across the Caribbean region. And they will be sharing their journeys about how important representation is, how important a woman's voice is in government, and how we as women can become more politically engaged. And so we want to set a few ground rules for the session this afternoon, this evening, just to ensure everything runs smoothly. We have two sessions taking place today. First up, we have a panel with two speakers, and then we have a panel or a presentation rather by one speaker. So we want to ask our members to keep your mic muted until it's time for you to ask questions. We have designated question and answer segments. Of course, the speakers may ask if persons want to ask questions during their presentations, but if we can try to keep the Q&A session for after the speakers present, that would be amazing. We also ask for contributions to be respectful and constructive. We know around election time, things can get a little crazy. We want to make sure our questions and our comments are respectful. Of course, this is a safe space. We do not condone the vilifying of any woman in politics. And we are not really here to discuss political party drama, but more so we are here to promote civic engagement and talk about the importance of your vote, why it's important for you to vote, how you can get involved in politics, and what factors you should consider when you are selecting a candidate to vote for, right? So we want to get straight into this afternoon's discussion. Of course, we are starting with session one, which is Women in Politics, Breaking Barriers and Leading Change. As I just said before, we have two amazing speakers for this session, and they are going to present on their journey in politics, their challenges, their triumphs, and why representation truly matters. And when they are both finished presenting, we will open the floor for questions, and then, of course, we will go into our second session. So our first panelist of the afternoon is the Honorable Ashel Morgan. She is a government senator and deputy speaker of the House of Representatives in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Now, I have to give you all a brief bio of her. She is an amazing young woman, and I know she's going to come and drop some gems for us this afternoon. So I'm just going to give you guys a brief overview of who she is and what she does. So Senator Ashel Morgan is a trailblazing attorney at law, entrepreneur, and parliamentarian. She was appointed Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives in St. Vincent and the Grenadines in 2020 and is the first ever young woman to hold the position. Described by Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves as an accomplished modern Caribbean woman, Senator Morgan is known for her eloquence and compelling vision for national development. A graduate of the University of the West Indies with degrees in economics and political science and law, she was called to the bar of St. Vincent and the Grenadines in 2015 and the bar of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis in 2023. In 2019, she established the law firm Morgan Law Inc., a dynamic legal practice offering expert solutions in real estate law, legacy, and estate planning and company law. Beyond her legal and legislative work, Senator Morgan is dedicated to inspiring the next generation, especially young women, to lead and dream boldly and own their power. Senator Morgan, the floor is yours. And I want to also encourage our members, if you can, feel free to put on your cameras so that you can engage with our panelists a little bit better and they can engage with you guys as well. So Senator Morgan, I am passing the floor over to you. Senator Morgan, I think you are muted.
I was just testing your responsiveness. Thank you so much, Renee.
No problem.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be here as part of this very important forum, Girls of Impact Trinidad and Tobago. And I must say that I have been so impressed with the work that you guys have been doing, because it is so important for women and young girls to see themselves as viable candidates and change makers in these spaces, in these small societies. I am from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Rennie already gave me an introduction. And my journey into politics has been nothing short of remarkable. Now, I want to ask you if any of you have ever seen yourself in politics, or have you shied away from it thinking that this is not for you? I'd like you to drop an emoji in the chat, because being a woman in politics is not for the faint of heart. It is not. Many female candidates face specific challenges, and I think one of the big challenges that we face is self-doubt, doubting ourselves whether or not we can do this. Politics is regarded as being a man's world. So, like many of you, I had doubts about whether or not I should enter into politics. And if anybody had told me as a little girl that I would be sitting in the House of Assembly, that one day be sitting in the House of Assembly debating budgets and formulating policy and laws, I may have laughed. But eventually, I warmed up to the idea. I went to university and I studied economics and political science. And this really broadened my consciousness about a lot of these societal issues and the historical issues that we face. And it was really a driver and a catalyst for me wanting to enter into politics. However, I took a slight detour. I decided to study law, because I thought that if I were going to enter politics one day, that I would need to have a background in law. I really wanted to give a voice for the voiceless. When I decided that I was going to be a lawyer, I had a romanticized version of what being a lawyer entailed. I thought it was going to be a lot like, what you see on Suits or any of these legal dramas, but nothing could have been further from the truth. So my journey into politics, it really wasn't a straight path. I took a detour. I went and did law, and it was just a series of moments where that culminated in purpose and me deciding to enter the political arena. And it came from a call from the Prime Minister asking me to sit in the Senate. Now, as a woman in politics, you are going to face doubt, as I said. You are going to be underestimated. You are going to be interrupted, and you may even be outright ignored. But if you intend to get into politics, you need to build a little muscle called resilience, because it really is a muscle. When you try things and you enter these spaces, it really builds your confidence. You get confidence to do these things by actually trying. Even though you feel as though you may not be qualified, rest assured there are mediocre men taking up spaces in parliament and other positions of leadership, and really the only thing that they have going for themselves is that they have an unshakable, undeniable self-confidence and belief in their ability to get things done. And I think we as women need to take a page out of their books, not to fake it until you make it, but to actually carve out spaces and develop yourselves in preparation for entering these spaces. I believe there are a lot of young women on this webinar tonight. So, despite the odds, I want to encourage you to speak up because your voice is definitely going to be needed in these spaces. Not when you're older, not when you feel ready, because you are never going to feel ready. You have to make the move and you have to believe in the value of your voice and in the value of your specific perspective. As I said, there are mediocre men taking up these spaces, and it is time for us to step up and offer ourselves. Of course, there are systemic challenges that sometimes act as barriers to women entering these spaces. You may not necessarily receive the support of your party members. I don't know how open-minded they are, but the most important thing is to build a system, build a strong support system. And I would encourage anybody that has intentions of taking up leadership roles, your advancement is going to be as good as the network and the support system that you have around you. So as young women, I'm really going to encourage you to cultivate that. Whether it is, volunteering in your community, organizing in your community, starting a podcast or a YouTube channel, leadership requires practice. And as I said, the more you practice, the better you get. The next thing that I want to advise is that you have to learn how to defend yourself, because you are going to face unwarranted attacks and criticism because of the general stereotype surrounding what is required for leadership, the qualities that are required for leadership. Generally, women who perform leadership roles face unfair stereotypes and comparison to men. For example, a woman who is being assertive in these spaces may be regarded as difficult to work with, troublesome, whereas a man who is doing that is going to be seen perhaps as, assertive, having what it takes, having the balls to stand up and to speak out. So these are some of the challenges that I particularly have faced, the stereotypes and the judgments that come with being a woman in politics. I would consider myself a fairly young woman, and I have found that I have had to tone myself down a bit to be palatable and to be acceptable. Because if you are seen as fashionable, as spunky, as sassy, you find that you tend to get a bit of pushback. So I have to be very, very careful with my fashion choices, because you simply want to be taken seriously in these spaces. God forbid you're a beautiful woman who's well endowed with a nice shape. You're going to face a lot of criticisms and judgments. So we as women have to be strong. You have to know yourself, and you have to be able to defend yourself when the situation warrants it. Early on in my political career, I was a victim of a smear campaign, and I thought that if I just stayed quiet and just, let the tide blow over, that things would improve. But as you know, that does not happen. You have to defend yourself against bullies in a respectful way, but in a way that people know that they cannot try you and get away with it. Because trust me, you are going to be tried in these arenas. So you have to be bold enough to speak your truth and to defend yourself when it is necessary. You know, leadership is not about being fearless. It is about choosing to show up even when you are afraid, even when your voice shakes. You have to stand up. You have to stand up. It's absolutely necessary. Because if you shrink, the opportunity might pass you by, and somebody who is not as competent, I don't know how many times many of you may have an idea and you don't act on your idea, and then you see somebody acting on their idea that you initially thought of. Seize the moment and be prepared to defend yourself when it is necessary, even when you are afraid. Because your actions might be the opportunity or the symbol or the banner that another young woman needs to see in order to activate her purpose. This is why representation matters, and I try to advocate for the representation of women and young girls in politics, because people need to see women like themselves acting in these spaces, not as token women, not as performative women, but actual agents and change makers, because the barriers that we break today is going to be the foundation or the bridge for the girls of tomorrow. So that's very important. If you want to lead, you have to believe in your voice and you have to cultivate specific skills, networking skills, public speaking skills. Because for effective communication, if you're going to be representing others, if you have an intention to represent others, you have to be able to communicate effectively and be able to inspire persons to want to effect or implement the changes. You have to be able to inspire others. So that is the extent of my presentation. I think I have tackled the challenges that I've faced. I've told you, ladies, about my journey into politics, from being a lawyer to being a senator and deputy speaker of the House of Assembly. And now I have taken the step to offer myself for active politics. And that in itself has been quite the journey. Right about now, we are going through the candidate selection process. And I hope that the next time that we have this conversation, I will be reporting some great news for you guys. So I just want to encourage you, if you intend to enter politics or any positions of leadership, to develop yourself. Womanhood is not monolithic, and female leadership is not monolithic. We tend to look at certain women in politics as the blueprint. We look at the Mia Motleys, Dame Eugenia Charles, but there are also the Lisa Hannas that exist in these spaces. There is room for all of us. And I think that we need to learn to cultivate our own womanhood, not as a blueprint that anybody has set for us, but to cultivate our own characteristics, our own hobbies, our own interests, not to try to fit yourself into the mold of what you think a female leader should be. But you should be looking to bring your own unique experiences, skills, perspective, looks even, to the position. Because that is the only way we're going to have true representation of what it means to be a woman in politics. I long for the day when women don't have to feel the need to tone down themselves in order to get into these leadership spaces, because what happens is that it presents an inauthentic position and an inauthentic representation of what it takes to be a woman in politics, and it ultimately makes the journey harder for the next generation of women. Coming off of the Beijing consensus, I would have imagined that there would have been many more women in positions of leadership. However, that has not happened. So it now falls to us to take the mantle forward, to bring our best selves, bring our voices to positions of leadership. So thank you guys for having me. I hope that something that I said sparked something within you and that you are inspired to take up positions of leadership, whether in your communities, in your countries, wherever you can make a change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Morgan, for that lovely presentation. And of course, we got a good bit of points from what you said, in terms of you're going to face doubt as a woman in these leadership spaces, but it's important for us to build resilience. And, I've always heard that for women in politics, you have to have some backbone, because if you are somebody who takes things personal, or you're going to be offended by everything, then this is probably not the field for you. So I love how you gave us those words of advice to give us motivation on our journey for those of us who may want to get into politics. And of course, we do wish you all the best, as I think you guys are going into election mode soon. So we wish you all the best in terms of your screening process and everything like that. So we're gonna take the questions after. So if you guys want, you could put your questions in the chat in the meantime, or you could leave them for after, because you will have the opportunity to unmute and to share your thoughts. So Senator Morgan's journey was very interesting. She started as a senator. Now she's going to try to make her way into becoming, is it a member of parliament, Senator Morgan? Do you call it MP as well?
We have a unicameral parliament, so I am currently a member of parliament, but I want to enter active politics as a candidate for the next general election. So I'm currently going
Okay.
through candidate selection
Screening
process.
process.
Yeah, there's one other candidate, and the party and the people, of course, are going to have to make a decision soon because our elections are constitutionally due this year.
Okay, great. All right, nice. So we will save the questions for after. Now we want to move on to our next amazing speaker. Senator Morgan, please don't go. We take any questions after. We want to move on to Ms. Shirley Osborne, who is the former Speaker of the Legislative Assembly of Montserrat. And of course, I must give a little overview of who she is and what she does and what she did, so that you guys have a better understanding when she comes to present here today. So Shirley Osborne is a writer, social entrepreneur, and passionate advocate for women's leadership and empowerment. A former Speaker of the Montserrat Legislative Assembly and Chair of the Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians for the Caribbean, Atlantic, and the Americas, Shirley has dedicated her career to promoting women's participation in public policy and decision making. She's the founder of the Girls Education Project and the Montserrat Women's Resource Center, both of which focus on empowering girls and supporting survivors of gender-based violence. Her work spans continents, having collaborated with organizations such as UN Women, the Anti-Defamation League, and the Massachusetts Women's Political Caucus. In addition to her leadership roles, Shirley is a published author, journalist, and global speaker. Her writings have appeared in The Parliamentarian, HuffPost, and The Jamaican Gleaner, and she's the author of several books, including When Women Lead and Tolerance is No Virtue. Shirley holds an MBA from Simmons University and has been featured in Leading Women, 20 Influential Women Share Their Secrets to Leadership, Business, and Life. Whether sailing, hiking, or championing women's rights, Shirley brings passion and purpose to everything she does, all while remaining deeply rooted in her Caribbean heritage. Ms. Osborne, we are delighted to have you here. We have had unheard very high remarks from our board of or one of our directors on our board, Georgia, who is in the chat right now. And so we hand the floor over to you.
Thank you so very much, Renee. Good evening, everyone. Hi, Georgia. I saw you. I saw you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me. Um, Let me just acknowledge Ms. Morgan, Senator Morgan. A lot of what she said is so true. And active politics, representational politics, one you have to go out to ask people to vote for you and give them a reason to vote for you is, to put it nicely, a really tough road. So I wish you all the best, actually. So really, politics is, I think of politics as one of the most honorable professions. People don't generally think of politics as a profession. It's something that people do. There are certain kinds of people who do politics, certain kinds of men, and you do politics to get into government, and then there's a whole, there's a whole long list of thoughts and ideas that people have about what that entails. Much of it not positive. As a matter of fact, when I was born into a political family, my father and my mother went off to England in the 50s to go to school, and they migrated. My father had always wanted to come back. My mother, not so much, but she came back. And I was born in Monza. My oldest sister was born in England, and I was born in Monza because my father was determined to come back. He came back, went into business and into politics. My mother was his speech writer, his wardrobe person. She was the person who did all the critiques of his presentations and so on. And I spent a lot of late nights with my mother. My mother was a teacher, yeah? And so when she was preparing my father's speeches, for example, I was her dictionary person. So I have been listening to politics since I was a very small child. I wanted to go into politics. My father sent me off to school in England. I came back home determined to go into politics. My father said, no, nope. He said, no child of mine is getting into politics. Politics is dirty business. Never. No, forget that. And especially you're a girl. And that was the end of that. So I didn't get into politics until much later. We had the volcanic eruptions in Montserrat in the mid-90s, 1995. I had gone to the US then to do my master's degree, and as a matter of the volcano erupted in July when I was finishing my exams, and so there really was no point in coming back home. So I stayed in the United States. Now, one of the reasons I went off to the States in the first place was because I got in trouble with the government. My father was the chief minister, but I had been taught in my family, mostly by my mother, that you question everything, you challenge things, and that's part of what development is. That's part of governance. That's part of politics. That's part of moving your country forward. And I challenged the government. I used to write the newspaper, and I challenged not the government. I didn't challenge the government. I looked at things that were not working in Montserrat, and I wrote about it. And the then Minister of Education got all up in his feelings and complained with the Public Service Commission, who had a very stern conversation with me. And I said, well, the issue is education. And if we don't do education right, we can't do development right. It's not going to work. And then there was I wrote another, and they let me off, quote unquote, they let me off that time. And then I wrote another one sometime later. I was working for the government at the time, by the way, yeah? So the reason they pulled me is because in our general orders, it's called, that the things that govern the civil service, and Trinidad has their version too. You're not allowed to criticize the government when you work for the government. My point was, but if, in Montserrat's case, for example, the majority of people, of educated people, the majority of the people with a wider worldview, who are more likely to be able to contribute to certain kinds of development, work for the government. And if we can't challenge the government, then we have a problem. So anyway, I wrote another article about a health matter, and they called me back in again and said, you must apologize to the minister. And I said, no, I will not. And they said, okay, then bye-bye, you can't work for the government anymore. So then I took off and went to the States to do my master's degree. And so then I came back some years later. My brother went into politics. My father said it was okay. He's a boy, so he got to go. And he said, come help me campaign. And it's at the time when I had I've been working in the United States doing a lot of social work with young girls, with women. And it was in 2012, 2013. My father had just died, and the company I was working with in the United States, we had sold off to a larger company. And so I was kind of free. And so I came back and I got into the back end of politics. I was made the chair of the party, a new party that was being formed. I had a wonderful time, a really, really wonderful time. Although I thought that I wanted more, I wanted to be in government, I really, really thoroughly enjoyed the organizing of the politics. Yeah. And the party won. We got 7 out of 9 seats. And I was made the speaker. And that took me in a whole nother direction. The one thing I'll tell you about that was when women are in positions of leadership, just like Ashel said, we have to be careful. We literally have to be careful not to be seen to be too much of anything. If you can't be too much of them, but then also not too little. So a quick story, just what I used, this is kind of one of the defining moments of my position, my time in the speakership. I had an issue with a member of parliament who misbehaved, right? You're not supposed to cuss and swear in parliament, and she did. And so I wouldn't apologize, so I had to sanction her. And people said to me, you made the good decision. I think she was suspended for like 2 months or something. I think so, because I think it was May, and she was suspended until Parliament prorogued in July. So people said, you did the right thing, but it should have been a man doing that. So you take a strong position, you do what's right, but you're a woman, you're a girl, so you're not really supposed to be doing that. You're going to come up against those things. But those are also some of the major reasons why there need to be more women in politics. So on the question of the importance of representation, at a very basic level, it just makes sense. Women are 51% of the population, so we're more than half. So it just makes sense that we be at least half of the representation, yeah? You think. There is also the fact that women bring different skills. We are socialized differently. I was brought up in a time where I was learning, and my mother was very much a part of this. I can do anything that men can do. So I used to climb trees. I played cricket. I did everything the boys did. And I did some of them better than the boys did. I beat boys in school in all kinds of things, but yet you're a girl, so you have to. And the sad thing is that really has not changed much. You'd think that as time goes along and we're learning so much more and we're becoming more advanced, but it really hasn't changed much. In some details you have, but in the big picture, no. And so when you go into something like politics, you come up against these old stereotypes, these old norms that you're required to participate in. And you have to redo yourself. Now, the thing about politics is that it requires people. People vote for you, so you have to engage them. And so therefore, it's a basic communication law. When you're speaking to someone, you have to speak in their language. It doesn't make sense if you're speaking French and they don't speak French. You could shout, and we do that, you're talking to somebody who doesn't speak your language. You raise your voice, hoping they'd understand. But unless you're speaking their language, they're not going to understand you. So when you're doing politics, one of the things that we have to do is perhaps not so much change yourself, but the attention has to be always on the person. You are engaging that person to vote for you, to want you to represent. You have to give them the reason. So your language, your demeanor, your presentation has to meet those, and that's perfectly normal. It's what happens in marketing. Yes, it's what happens in sales. It's what happens in our normal interactions with people. Think about this. One of the things I tell women all the time is that we are not just one. We are the whole gamut of human personalities and capabilities and propensities. We are. And we pull out different ones at different times. I speak to my mother very different than I speak to my father, for example. I speak to my sister different than I speak to my husband. I'm speaking here in a very different way than I speak to the guys on the dock. So you pull something out because you have to speak in their language. That's really, really important. Yeah. Um, and in the Caribbean, we do a lot of, well, everywhere actually, but in the Caribbean, it's probably much easier in our smaller islands to know people. And so one of the important things is network. You have to build a network. And in many ways, it's easier in the Caribbean because we live outside. We talk to people, we lime on the road, we jump up with them, we play carnival, we dance until 4 o'clock in the morning, we meet at the bar and the rum shop in the store. And we are much more engaging with one another than other people. In Montserrat, we say we mind people business. They mind your business. They have no compunction but asking you your business, right? So we can get into one another's spaces much more easily, and that's really important. A couple of weeks ago, I interviewed the new premier of Anguilla, who's a woman, the first one, and she spoke about that. She spoke about having to build relationships, build having how being a woman in the space and being a political woman and having to adjust and adapt and build your relationships, and how different it is now from how it used to be. Because in her father's time, my father's time, we knew they knew not just the people, they knew all your generations, they knew your mother, your father, your auntie, your brother, they knew everybody. Now, because people have moved around so much, we don't have that deep knowledge of one another necessarily anymore, but we still have this our culture still is to reach out and engage. And so building networks is not particularly difficult. It's very, very necessary if you're going into politics. Whether you want to run for office or you want to be the person behind the scenes promoting someone. Matter of fact, in a couple of weeks, actually tomorrow, I'm talking with a woman from Jamaica, Maureen Weber, who is a political consultant, and she actually worked for the team in Anguilla who got Premier Richardson Hodge elected, and that's one of the things that we're going to talk about. Now, another reason why it's important that for representation is that, again, the issue of communication. Women communicate differently and are much more open to communication and collaboration. Egos don't get in the way as much as with men, and testosterone is not such a big problem. And it might sound, you might not think it matters that much, but it does. Men are programmed and conditioned and socialized to behave in a certain way, and women are. And whether we like it or not, that's just how it is. And I think Ashel also said what we got to do is use our strengths, play to our strengths and use our strengths. And one of women's strengths is collaboration. As a matter of fact, one of the studies done in the United States, in the House of Congress, they've found, and in other places, they've found that women work across the aisle. They work cross-party much more than men do. And therefore, they get lots of things passed that would not be passed. They also look at different aspects of our living. And so they bring different things to the table. And when women are in the room, whether it's peacemaking or, you're talking about education or food, or even you're talking about, mining, women bring a different perspective, which is important. Yes. And then everybody does better. Now, the advice I have for you before I finish, one of the things that's important to do if you're running and going to office, going into politics, is you have to make decisions about who you want to be, but also what you want to be known for. It is really important. Everybody in Montreal, everybody in the world who knows anything of me, everybody knows that my primary interest is women. I am committed to reducing men's violence against women. I'm committed to women's leadership. I'm committed to women's security. I'm committed to women in business. It's women. I get a lot of trouble for that because men and women push back against that too. But that is my decision. So you get to choose, because you can't do everything. No one person can do everything. But as the saying goes, just because you can't do everything doesn't mean you shouldn't do something. But precisely because you can't do everything, it really is not, it's not very productive to be all over the place. However, it is really important to know a lot about a lot of things. So one of the things you get to work on is developing what I call a vocabulary of experiences. Develop a vocabulary of experiences. Just know stuff about stuff. know about art and culture and science and maths and travel and food. Know about things, find out about them, talk to people and get to know that. You'll find that it comes up a lot. You'll find you get to use it. Um, when my parents sent me off to school in England, I did not want to go. I wanted to go to UWI. I wanted to go to Jamaica to school. My parents said, no, you're going to England. I fussed. However, when I got to England, what happened was I got to be able to go over to Europe and I got a different perspective. I got information I would not have got here, right? So it's really, really important. It helps me now. It also puts me in a position where people say, what are you talking about? Because I'm way out there. But it gives me a wide range. It's really, really important. And especially in the context of the Caribbean where we are developing countries. We are trying to find our feet in a world that does not want us to stand. It is really important to have all the information so they can't push you around. Because bear in mind, we're not working just in our islands. We're working in the region, but we are also part of the world. I shall mention Mia Motley. Mia Motley is all over the world talking. It is important that our voices get out into the world, but we also have to know what the world is about. So we need to be listening to the news, really know what's going on in the world, pay attention. And above all, then maybe not above all, but to put all of this together, important to all of this is language. Language. We speak English in our part of the world. Know how to speak English. Speak the best English that you possibly can. Go learn English. So when you can speak clearly, you can say exactly what you mean, and you can challenge people when they tell you things, you know that you can challenge what they're saying and what they might or might not mean. And when you know language, they can't push you around. My father used to say that Montreal is still a colony, right? We're not independent, so we still do a lot of our stuff has to be interacting with Great Britain. And my father always used to say, the English people can't push me around because I know them, I know how they think, I know their language well. Know the language. And if you get the chance, you possibly can get to know another language. Spanish, French, German, I don't care. Just get to know them, because what that does is it gives you a different way of looking at things. So to wrap up, the most important thing is that you know who you are. You get centered and confident about you in your competence. You pick your battles, pick the work you want to do. Also, at the same time, make sure you know everything that's going on around you. Read a lot and get to speak. Know how to speak. Get to speak so well that nobody can test you and you can speak to anybody. One of the important things is that you be able to speak to people in their language, at their level. So I watched my father. His business was boats. So he was on the port, on the dock, talking with sailors. Sailors cuss and swear. The cuss and swear make your head spin. And my father could do that. He could also sit and have a conversation with my child from Dominica, for example. And he could sit in the House of Commons and have a conversation with the English people at their level. That is what I would recommend to you. If you do nothing else, make sure you get your language together. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Miss Osborne. Again, so many gems. I see Georgia put in the chat. I think that was my favorite part, getting a vocabulary of experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Because of course it's so important when you go there to, whether it's be in parliament or so, it's important to know about different issues that affects your country, and that really requires you to be well read. So I like how you said, listen, you want to be known for something. So yes, there is an area that you should specialize in, but you should still have general knowledge of a lot of things to help you have a better appreciation of development, and these perspectives will really help to move your country forward. I really, really, really appreciated that perspective there. And so we want to open up the floor for questions. I see we already have questions in the chat. So we want to get the question session going. And of course, I'm not sure if the person who put the question in the chat wants to unmute and ask, or if you would like me to ask for you. Either is fine. I think her name is Anthea. But she asks, Senator Morgan, thank you for finding the courage to speak your truth in the face of adversity, especially when your efforts are met with attempts to silence your voice. Can you share how you have personally navigated this reality and what has sustained you through these challenging moments? Can you share your thoughts on the role of mentorship in your life or in general?
Thank you, Renee. It was perfect. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you so much for these questions. Is it Bridge? I'm not sure what the name is.
This Anthea, this Anthea.
Anthea. Anthea.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your questions. I really had to think long and hard about, how I was going to answer that. But what I would say is that sometimes speaking your truth in spaces that are not necessary, where your voice is not necessarily welcome, is extremely difficult, but it is necessary, especially as a woman, where you are basically damned if you do and you are damned if you don't. Many people have regrets about not doing more than they have regrets about things that they have done. So it's very important for you to stand up for yourself. And I had to navigate this reality being a woman in politics in a society that is extremely divided in terms of partisan politics. Is extremely divisive, and you are going to be mischaracterized. Sometimes as a woman, you are even excluded from spaces simply because your voice, people do not want to hear your voice or to give you certain opportunities for whatever reason. So as women, we sometimes use targeted ways of, subtle ostracism and exclusion. But it's very important for you to cultivate your platform. As Miss Osborne said, you need to know your why and what you are known for, what you want to be known for, and you need to have the courage to stand up and speak up about it. What has sustained me throughout all of the adversity and all of the controversy is, a strong faith in God, a very, very strong faith in God and his ability to pull me through the most challenging situations. I grew up also with a mother who was very resilient. Me and my sister used to call her the get through boss because based on the challenges that she had in her life from being a young single mother, pregnant teenager, she did not go to a secondary school. I remember her dragging myself and my sister along to evening classes while she got her subjects one by one. She then went to the technical college at 35 years old. Could you imagine being at community college 35 years old in class with, you know, 18 and 19-year-olds? And then she later went on to raise myself and my sister as a single mother. She got her university degree at 50 years old. And when she died at the age of 67, she had a master's degree. So could you imagine somebody experiencing all of these challenges, not the best of circumstances, but just making the best of it, and seeing her resilience and her tenacity has really emboldened me and strengthened me to do what I do, especially in those challenging moments. Now, the second question, I believe, is to share my thoughts on the role of mentorship in general. I was an extremely shy young lady growing up. I didn't really find my voice or really find myself until I got to university. And even then, I was shy to approach a mentor. I didn't know how to approach a mentor to get them to mentor me. And I also had a bit of insecurity because I don't know if it's a Dunning-Kruger effect where you tend to second guess yourself. Even though you are very competent, I just felt like I didn't have enough value to offer to a mentor before I could make that big ask for somebody to mentor me. And what I did instead is that I read a lot. My mentors were books, biographies, stories about women that I admired, women that were doing great things, women that were doing special things, and specifically women who have gone through scandals and challenges and come out as pure gold in the end because, no pressure, no diamonds. And sometimes you need to have inevitably, you need to get a hard rub in order to come out, polished and gleaming. So while I was growing up, for some reason, I don't know if it's because of the experience with my mother, I just had an affinity towards reading stories. I would deliberately seek out stories about women who were experiencing challenges and how they overcame those challenges. So, for example, women like, for example, to use a more modern example, Kim Kardashian. We all know how Kim Kardashian came to fame. She had a sex tape, a sex scandal, but the way that she has managed to maneuver that, curate a platform for herself, and then parlay that into business opportunities and just becoming a formidable woman. I was really inspired by that. And also Rihanna. Rihanna's career could have taken an entirely different trajectory after that incident with Chris Brown, but she found a way to alchemize that, entirely rebrand, entirely reshape her persona. Well, I don't know if she reshaped her persona or if that was the catalyst that allowed her to be more of who she was. But I saw the way that that decision and that resilience of these women to dig deep inside and alchemize that into something positive that really spurred me on. So that is what I have done. I didn't specifically have the courage to approach a mentor or to say mentor me, but I read a lot. I read widely, and the women that I read about, the people that I read about, those were my mentors. So I hope that answers your question.
You more than answered my question. You seem to have been taking the script out of Miss Shirley Osborne's book as well. When you mentioned books, and then she was talking about reading, and it all came together. And then you talked about your mother, and your experiences there and what you saw. So thank you so much for sharing. It was very excellent. Thank you. And you're
Yes,
inspiring, and you're now a great mentor to everyone. So thank you so much.
thank
Thank
you. I would like to mentor more women, but the time does not necessarily provide for that. But I'm definitely open to maybe mentoring a small cohort, one-on-one, one or two ladies. Definitely open to it as time and my schedule permits.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Senator Morgan. And Girls of Impact will definitely be in touch with you. We have a mentorship program over the summer. And I'm sure we will have a lot of young women who may be interested in politics. So we will definitely keep in touch with you for that.
Lovely.
I saw that someone's hand is up, Trishelle Frank. So I'd allow Trishelle to ask her question to the panel.
Thank you, Renee. Just checking, is everyone hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing
All
you.
right. Okay, I'm unable to turn on my camera, so you won't be seeing my face tonight. Right? Good night, everyone. Good night, Miss Morgan. Good night, Miss Osborne. Good night, Renee. My question tonight is to Senator Morgan. So just a little bit of introduction of myself. So I'm Trishelle Frank. I am from Tobago, and I'm currently the Tobago coordinator for Girls of Impact. I'm employed in the judiciary of Trinidad and Tobago, and I am an avid traveler that is active on social media, among other things. So I first came across your platform, your TikTok platform, a few months ago, where you share your insights into your lifestyle and your career. and as an active person within the online space and a woman within the political arena, I have three questions for you. The first one, how has your presence on TikTok and other social media platforms have influenced how your colleagues and nationals of SVG perceive you? That's the first question. The second one, have your presence on TikTok and what you post affected you professionally in any way? And what advice, the third one, what advice can you give to the young women here tonight with regards to what they post online, especially when they aim to take up space within the political arena while remaining active and engaged on social media? If you need me to repeat the three questions, that's okay. I can.
All right, thank you so much, Trishelle, for those questions. It's very interesting that Trishelle said that because that is exactly how I came into contact with Ashel. And it also shows the importance of networking because I literally sent Senator Morgan a TikTok message and I was like, hi, do you want to be a speaker for a webinar? And she said yes, and that's how she's here today. So, Senator Morgan, we would love to hear your thoughts on social media and your profession, answering the questions that Trishelle asked.
Okay, Trisha, those are very interesting questions. And I must say that social media, like anything else, it is a tool. It can be used for good, it can be used for evil. Ultimately, it depends on how you use it. Now, I have been posting sporadically on TikTok for a while now, and I had really wanted to share more of my life as a parliamentarian. However, I held back because I felt as if I needed to tone things down in order to be taken seriously as a politician, because I thought that, engaging on TikTok may have been seen as, frivolous. And at the same time, you also want to maintain, as a woman, a sense of mystery and a sense of privacy. It all goes towards your allure and your charm. And I just didn't want to be overexposed in those spaces. But, it just kept nagging at me that, maybe you should try to curate the content. And I did that for a while. And then I finally decided that I had a bright idea to post a day in the life of a member of parliament. And the TikTok went viral, it blew up. And what that made me realize is that there's actually space for me to be my authentic self in these spaces, because representation really matters. If we are serious about engaging young girls and women in these spaces, we need to have realistic representation of what exactly a woman in politics looks like. So me posting my TikToks was my attempt, somewhat not intentionally, but that ended up being the effect of showing, my authenticity and, relatability of what exactly a parliamentarian looks like. Well, for example, or at least what my parliamentary experience looked like. And then the response was overwhelming. So many people commented that they were inspired, they were happy to be seeing this side of a parliamentarian, because usually it's shrouded in a lot of mystery. You're behind this curtain, you're with the people, but yet apart from the people. And I kind of broke down that wall. And, it really inspired me. I have not been posting as much lately because, I'm on the campaign trail and my time is extremely limited. However, TikTok has really helped me to find my voice and to express my authentic self. I feel like, in a strange way, I feel like I could be me on TikTok as opposed to other social media platforms. Now, of course, my presence on TikTok, I don't think it has affected me professionally. Of course, there would be people that would be, dragging you online There were comments on Facebook about me being a influencer, politician, etc., etc. I have not chosen to focus on those comments. I have instead chosen to focus on the encouraging comments. For example, there was one young lady that said that my TikTok has inspired her to work harder and to study harder. And then there were other people who said that, my TikToks have made them consider being a woman in politics. And ultimately, that is what I derive my source of inspiration from. So I'm happy to be here and happy to be contributing meaningfully in that space. Now, what advice can I give to young women with regards to what they post online? Well, we need to remember that the internet, Beyonce's internet, as they like to say it, is forever. And what you post out there, you might be able to post it and delete it, but it is being stored somewhere. So in the back of your mind, you have to bear in mind that if you would not invite comments on it, do not post it. Because whether or not you care about what people have to say, people are going to have a comment. So if you think you would have a problem with people commenting on what you have posted, whether in a negative way or in a positive way, I would suggest that you don't post. Another thing I would suggest doing, act as if your grandmother were looking at this content. Is this something that you would be proud of showing to your grandmother? Is this something that, were you in a work setting and your content were to be replayed back to you in a social setting, is it something that you would be embarrassed about? Consider that. Because while we want to be authentic and while we want to, show off our true selves, there are boundaries to that, because we still live in a world where there are certain expectations of women in leadership. So nothing derogatory, nothing embarrassing, nothing that is likely to bring negative attention to yourself, because the internet is forever. As a politician, you are going to be representing people, and you want to have persons to have that confidence in you that you could represent them and represent them well. So that is what I would say. If it's anything that you're going to be ashamed about, anything that 10 years down the line you think could surface in front of an employer, I would recommend that you don't post it.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're most welcome.
Okay, thank you so much, Senator Morgan. I just have a very quick update. The third speaker, Ms. Amrita Deonarayan, had to cancel. She has another engagement to attend. So what we intend to do, Senator Morgan and Ms. Osborne, if your time permits, we could extend the Q&A a little bit longer, and also just incorporate some aspects of what the third speaker was going to cover, in essence, in terms of why young women should vote, and as well as how important is it that young women get involved in civic engagement, even beyond just voting, but in terms of, I know Ms. Osborne particularly, you are very involved in civil society movements. You have been involved in civil society movements. So how can young women be able to engage in civic life beyond just election day? So you want to look at the importance of voting, engaging in political life beyond election day. And perhaps, Senator Morgan, since you are on the campaign trail right now, what do you focus on when you are trying to get someone to vote for you? Because one of the things we want to touch on is, what should young women look for in terms of choosing a candidate to vote for? So maybe you guys could touch on those things just a little bit. I know we are detouring the conversation a little bit, but we're still trying to cover as much as we intended to, because at the end of the day, we want to facilitate one, young woman getting involved in politics and decision making, but also young women going out to vote. You know, how important is that? What decisions does parliamentarians make that affect young women? Because I know I attended a award ceremony recently, and one of the speakers, she said, ask these candidates, what are you going to do for me as a woman? Because women face different challenges than men. And when you have majority of parliamentarians being men making laws that may not necessarily, you know, be gender focused, what should we focus on when we have to choose candidates in the upcoming election? So I want to just leave those thoughts with you guys. And of course, everyone else, the floor is still open for you to ask questions and engage with the speakers over the next few minutes. Ms. Osborne, I don't know if you want to go first, seeing that Senator Morgan just spoke, and then we could flip over to Senator Morgan after.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the importance of voting is. I mean, I'm trying to remember who said. Somebody wrote a long, long time ago. The fact that you're not interested in politics does not change the fact that politics is interested in you. Somebody else, I think this was probably Winston Churchill, said that something to the effect that you vote, if you don't, whether you vote or you don't vote, you get the government that you deserve. Words that, if I can't remember the exact saying right now, but the point is that we live in what we call democracies, yeah. And one of the things that is considered the foundational tenet of democracy is the vote. You vote your government in. If you don't vote, you don't have. You can't argue. You can't fuss. You vote for the government that you want, and if you refuse to vote for whatever reason, then you have the government. You can't argue the government. You can't fuss with the government if the government doesn't do something you like. In a country like Brazil, for example, Brazilians are required to vote. You don't get to skip out on not voting. They do electronic voting and all. They make it really, really easy. In the United States, right now, they're making it more and more difficult for people to vote, on the other hand. And so one of the questions that comes up is, what kind of government do you ultimately get? You get the government you deserve, is what some people say. But the point is that if we are interested in what happens in our environment, in our country, in our community, we must recognize that every single thing in our lives is governed by a law. Every single thing. And the laws are made by politicians, by parliamentarians. And so if we care about the laws that determine how we behave and how we conduct our lives, what opportunities that are open to us or not, then we must be concerned about voting. And of course, there's the standard saying that the young people of today are we are the adults and the leaders of tomorrow. And so you're creating the society that you want. Because what happens when you vote now, decisions are made now, but the end result, the outcome, you don't see for 2, 3, maybe even 15, 20 years. Because politics is also, the governance is a long game. And so you vote not just on what you want for today, but what you envision for yourself later on and for your children and your grandchildren. China said the United States a couple of days ago, the minister of Foreign Affairs, I guess you'd call him, said to America that China has been here for 5,000 years. We have been here for 5,000 years. We are planning for another 5,000 years. And that is what has been said in geopolitical circles for centuries, for a long time. China is playing a long game. America plays for today and tomorrow. China is playing for next year and 500, 600 years, 1,000 years from now. And that's what we need to think about when we are voting, especially young people. As you get older, it doesn't get any less important, but you have less life to live. Let's put it. So when you're 20, think about this: you live until you're 80 or 90. That's 60 and 70 years you have to live. What kind of society do you want to live in? What kind of country do you want? Where you want your country to go? Yeah. So it's really, really important that young people get involved in voting, and especially in communities like ours, in countries like ours, which are so small and so vulnerable to all kinds of influences, positive and noxious. It's important that we be aware. One of the things that I said earlier, that my parents sent me to England, and I got to spend a lot of time in Europe. I actually lived in Italy for a number of years, and one of the things that I found really was really formative for me actually was student engagement, students out on the street. When United States invaded Grenada, I was in Italy. I went out on the streets, and there's a conversation that was being had there that was not being had in the Caribbean at all, as a matter of fact. When I was in school in England, there were marches for the release of Steve Biko had died, Nelson Mandela. I got involved in those because there's a conversation going on there about our responsibility for our communities that goes beyond food to eat and a house and food and shelter. That there are considerations that go beyond the daily, and that it's really, really important that we think of those. And as far as civic life is concerned, there's no separating them really, because like I said, our lives are run by laws. If you want to buy something, there are laws that say what you can and cannot sell, what you can and cannot buy, and where you can buy it. You know, something as simple as that. There are laws that govern women's lives. How we go to school, whether we go to school or not. And there are laws that are written, there's legislation that's written, and then there are the cultural norms and expectations, which are sometimes just as, well, not sometimes, yeah, very often, just as intense, just as powerful as, and sometimes perhaps even more than the written laws. And those are driven by civic society, by the lives that we live on a day-to-day basis. And so when we talk, for example, about choosing your platform, choosing your work that you want to do, what you want to be known for, what you really want to engage in, you will find that it comes back down to life around you. It comes out of that. And so, although I hear a lot of talk about we're not teaching civics in school anymore, so we're not being taught how to be good citizens, quote unquote, in school, but we are being taught how to be citizens by what's around us, what's around our environment. And so if we want to live in a society that's safe, I know, for example, Trinidad is having real difficulties now with violence and with just, stuff that we don't want to have in our lives. The question for young people, for everybody, is what do you do about it? Do you just put up bars on your house and try to just stay as safe as possible? Or do you put yourself out there and say, no, there's a difference that I can make? And for me, that will be my answer. There's a difference that you can make. But of course, you can't make it by yourself necessarily. And so working with others, building community groups, start one if there isn't one. And it doesn't have to be big. It could be just 3 people who are working to ensure that you are aware of, what's going on with people close to you. And he's not digging into people's business necessarily. He's just being aware of the world around you and seeing how that fits into the world that you want to live in, the community you want to live in, and what your responsibility is for participating in that. So for me, all of this comes down to how responsible we feel, or whether we feel responsible for anything outside ourselves and our families. And if we're talking about people interested in politics, of course, the answer is yes, we are. We are interested and we are responsible. Now, how far you extend that responsibility, that sense of responsibility, is up to you. Organizing a community group, checking to see who's safe and when somebody needs help. There are homeless people. There are people who are struggling with, have financial issues. There are people. One of the things, for example, that my mother did outside of politics. My mother was a teacher, and one of the things that she did was look out for children after school. So if you're a teacher, for example, it's an easy flow. There are children who are not doing well in school. You can ask the question, why aren't they doing well in school? It's not necessarily because they lack brain cells. Most times it's not. It's something going on in the family. It's something that they are missing. It's violence in the family. It's financial troubles. It's somebody who died. It's grief that they're dealing with. If you work in health, if you're a nurse, you don't just look at the people who come to you. You're the extension into the society. How you participate in the society could be you being aware. You're supporting people outside of the clinic. If you're a lawyer, it could be doing pro bono work for women who are suffering, who need protection from a violent partner or something, or families who have children who need support of some kind. There are always ways in which we can participate. So it doesn't even necessarily have to be an organized participation, just as long as we acknowledge and accept a responsibility to add something positive to our communities, to try to move that community, how I put it, in the direction of goodness and meeting people where they are. So whether we have differences of religion or politics or language or education, the question is, how responsible are we for our community, and how do we exercise, how do we handle that responsibility? That's what I'd say.
Thank you so much, Ms. Osborne. Now we want to move on to Senator Morgan. I know you're probably going to share a little bit about in terms of you're on the ground right now campaigning and stuff like that. But maybe you may want to touch also on, there's a question in chat about subject areas. I know UE offers a political science degree. Many universities offer it. Do you think it's important or it's necessary for somebody to study political science? Do you think it's necessary for somebody to study law? I think that's a myth. But people always think, well, lawyers go on to be politicians. So you could probably incorporate a little bit of that into what you're going to tell us.
Okay, certainly. So the first thing I'm going to speak about my experience being on ground. What I have encountered is a lot of voter apathy. You would go to people and they are not necessarily inclined to vote. You hear them say things like, I'm not voting, I'm not interested in politics, why should I vote? These kind of responses. Not necessarily that they're not voting for your party, they're not voting at all. And I think it's because people sometimes see the political process as something outside of themselves. It's something that those people in parliament do, and it absolutely has nothing to do with me down here. And nothing could be further from the truth. When I was a student of political science, one of the first things that they taught us is that, politics is the allocation of scarce resources. Who gets what, when, where, how, and why. And a lot of people are motivated by the getting, because you would get some questions. I I'm not voting because the government doesn't do anything for me. And I think it is possibly a lack of civic education, in that some people don't understand what is the role of government. It's not like some Santa Claus or some daddy out there dishing out a lot of goodies. Some people seem to think that that is what politics entails. And I think it's possibly characteristic of how our Caribbean societies developed, coming out of a post-colonial society where, the master was the one providing for your needs. And politicians now sometimes tend to use this as a bargaining chip. It's not supposed to be that way, but the society has evolved in such a way that people have now come to expect that. Now, in terms of turning the tide around, I simply try to engage with the person on a personal level, because you can't reach people that can't relate to you. You can't inspire people that can't relate to you. I try to, first of all, make that human connection, because people want to do business with people that they know, like, and trust. And I presume, and I know that this also translates to politics. The charismatic politicians do exceptionally well. For example, our comrade leader, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Ralph Gonsalves. He's an extremely charismatic man, well known and well loved, not only in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but in the region and around the world, because he has a special talent for making people feel seen, heard, known, and appreciated. He just has that way of seeing the best in people and bringing out the best in people and seeing the potential in people. And I think this kind of a connection is what politicians need to foster with people, because people need to know that you actually care about them and their issues, and they're actually trying to make a difference in their life. You're not in there for the belly full. You're not in there to eat a food. You're not in there to make money, but you are in there genuinely to develop their lives, to develop the country, and to chart a path for a progressive future. Yes? So that has been my experience on the ground. Is a very huge challenge to surmount the voter apathy. What I do is try to sell myself first, trying to relate and form that kind of a human connection with them, and then they might be even more receptive to hear about the policies and programs of the party that can possibly impact their lives and help them. The question, let me move on to the question of the young lady, Nadej. I hope I am not butchering your name. I hope I've pronounced it correctly. As a young woman applying to university and going into politics, I would say that having a law degree would be a plus, but it's not the be all and the end all of it. It helps because when you are navigating parliament and the political space, lawyers have specific training that definitely, in terms of interpreting laws, in terms of reading law, that can be helpful. Those specific skills can be helpful in a parliamentary space where you as a parliamentarian will be required to debate on bills, whether for or against the bill. You need to understand it. You need to be able to break down the law to the listening public in a way that is relatable, because usually it's not lawyers that you're speaking to, it's laymen. So you have to present your arguments in a way that is logical, relatable, concise, and very compelling. So any area of study that allows you to develop your skills as a public speaker, that allows you to have, I wrote down the phrase that Miss Osborne used. She had a very succinct way of putting it. any career that would allow you to expand on that vocabulary of experiences would be great for you, right? You have to have a wide worldview because, as our Prime Minister likes to say, he who knows law knows nothing. So if you keep your focus narrow on a specific area, you're going to be missing a lot of nuance. You're going to be missing a lot of context. And you need that if you intend to be a good politician or if you intend to be a good representative of persons. So what I would really encourage you to do is to, read widely, travel, because travel broadens your worldview and your outlook on life. There is no particular subject area that could really prepare you for politics, but having that broad outlook on life, having an open mind, having a growth mindset to know that you could try things and become better at it, that your body of knowledge is not absolute and fixed. That as you go along and as you try things, you're going to learn things, you're going to get better at doing things. Just have that open mind and have that growth mindset. Me in particular, when I was at A-level, I studied history, sociology, literature, and Spanish. So those are the courses that I did that really laid the background to get into politics, and then later political science, and then later my law degree. So I studied politics, history, my lighting has gone, politics, history, these kind of things that really broadens your outlook on life. That is what I would encourage you to do. In terms of activities, as a woman, you really need to cultivate interests and hobbies. It makes you an interesting person. It helps you to hone your conversation because you have a wide body of knowledge and a wide vocabulary of experiences to draw on, which makes you personable, which makes you relatable, which makes you inspirational, which makes you compelling. So I would encourage, get involved in a hobby or two. Something that you like, not something that you think is the in thing. So you don't need to be going to Pilates every Thursday afternoon because that is what the girlies are into. No, you need to find something that actually resonates with you. You may not like Pilates. Your thing might be football. Your thing might be cooking. Whatever it is that is unique to you, wherever your unique interests intersect with what is practicable for your pockets, that is what you should explore. Explore hobbies that you really genuinely like. Get involved in public speaking is very important because you need to be able to convey complex ideas in a very concise way. So public speaking, you also need to learn frameworks of speaking and have an organized mind to be able to present an argument in a very logical and systematic way. If you think about your favorite speakers, what resonates and what sticks out with them, they're not boring. They're very relatable, and more likely than not, they're talking about something that you are interested in. So pursue things that you are interested in, read widely, get involved in networking activities, things that would take you outside of your comfort zone, whether it be volunteering, you name it, whatever it is that you are interested in. Focus on building out your network because you never know where your next opportunity is going to come from. And as well, you need that support system to propel you forward. So that's what I would suggest and what I would recommend to any young person who is interested in entering the political field. Or as young women, just being a well-rounded woman. So you have to cultivate your womanhood. A part of cultivating your womanhood is prioritizing your education over your entertainment. There is going to be time for entertainment, but prioritize your education because it really does take you a long way. And I'm not speaking necessarily about formal education because education comes from several sources. You could draw on your interests, your reading interests, your hobbies, your travel, but educating yourself in a holistic way. I think you'll do well. So I hope that answers your questions.
Thank you so much, Senator Morgan. It's 8 o'clock. So we're looking to wrap it up. I know you ladies are very, very busy, and I am so grateful that you guys were here with us this evening, sharing your experiences, answering questions, engaging with the young women who are on this call, some of whom want to get into politics, others who may have voter apathy and questioning whether or not they should go out and vote. I hope we were able to convey to them that it is very important for women to be involved in politics because they bring a different perspective, as Ms. Osborne said. We are socialized differently, so we are able to work differently and bring this new perspective that helps to move development forward. And I know that Senator Morgan, you really stressed on the importance of being resilient because while women are needed in politics, it's not an easy or straight road. It requires you to be strong. It requires you to defend yourself sometimes. And it requires you, of course, to make sure that you are able to remember what people elected you for and why you are essentially there. So thank you guys so much for being here with us. I don't know if you guys would like, you could leave your emails in the chat. Our speakers, if you are okay with the young woman being able to engage with you, feel free to leave your emails in the chat. And of course, to the participants on the call, we have resources available for you. So we're going to send them to you via email after, as well as the recording from the session today. I saw somebody put on their camera. I don't know if they want to say something before we wrap up. If not, thank you guys so much. I hope you were inspired and empowered by our conversation this afternoon. And please stay tuned to Girls of Impact because we have so much amazing events coming up for young women and girls in Trinidad and Tobago. Ms. Osborne, Senator Morgan, thank you, thank you, thank you. And we hope to engage with you again very soon. Have a great night.
You are most welcome, Renee. Thank you so much for having me. Before I sign off, I saw one last question. The young lady was asking, where did I obtain my law degree? I studied at the University of the West Indies, Cave Hill campus, and then I did the legal education certificate in Trinidad, graduating in 2015.
All right. Yeah. And thank you very, very much for inviting me. I enjoyed this, and I hope I inspired somebody to not just run, to vote, to be involved. I put my email in the chat. If anybody wants to get in touch, feel free.
Thank you so much, ladies. So everyone, as you can see, the emails are in the chat, so feel free to engage with them. And I do hope you guys have a great night. Bye, everyone.
Take good care. Bye-bye.